Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today comes from our most recent Metis Strategy Digital Symposium. The topic was transforming a global IT operating model, and the panelists who spoke about the topic were Ash Banerjee, the Global Chief Information Officer of Dentons, and Anil Bhatt, the Global Chief Information Officer of Elevance Health. The gentleman who led the conversation was Metis Strategy Vice President and Central Office Lead Mike Bertha, who joins me now. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Peter. Always great to be here.
Well, Mike, I mentioned that this discussion centered around the topic of transforming a global IT operating model. Why was this an important topic for us to cover now, and why were Ash and Anil good people to personify the topic itself?
Pivoting operating models continues to be a top priority for CIOs. It's a major undertaking for any organization as you're fundamentally changing how you work. Everything it takes to go from a defined strategy to a set of targeted results. It's particularly a major undertaking for large global organizations that support multiple business units with resources, in many cases, spanning multiple geographies. Many of the folks in our ecosystem that sit in the technology leadership domain are either contemplating a pivot to the operating model or actively pursuing it. So we thought this was a very relevant topic. In terms of why this panel, Ash and Anil represent two of the largest companies in their respective domains. They've gone through major operating model transformations in recent years due to a combination of M&A activity, changing consumer preferences, and just the overall shifting digital landscape. If they can lead change in organizations that are this large with this much complexity, we thought our audience of global tech executives would want to hear their story.
Thanks, Mike. Well, let's get into that topic. Again, it's transforming a global IT operating model featuring Ash Banerjee of Denton's, Anil Bhatt of Elevance Health, with Metis Strategy's own Mike Bertha.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome, Anil and Ash. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Peter mentioned, the topic for our discussion today is transforming global IT operating models. We like to think of an operating model of all of the things that take you from a strategy to results. That includes the roles and responsibilities people play and the processes you follow to plan, deliver, and measure value. I'm going to start with you, Anil Bhatt. You are the global CIO of Elevance Health, the $137 billion health insurance carrier, which many might know what his former name is as Anthem. As we've spoken in the past, and we talked about your IT operating model evolution, you mentioned that it started with one that initially focused on enabling the business. Over time, that shifted to modernizing the tech stack, and most recently, it focused on customer experience. Some of the metrics that I've found very remarkable are you've been able to achieve 70% of your interactions with your members through digital channels, and you've had upwards of 12 million registrations on your app, Sydney. What were some of the biggest challenges you encountered as you transitioned your operating model to one that's focused on customer experience?
Awesome, great. First of all, thanks for having me here. Great to be on the panel with Ash, and look forward to a great conversation. So I think, as you mentioned, traditionally, the focus has been how does technology enable some of the business priorities, and how do we make sure that we are really focused on not only the security, data, and technical enablement of the key capabilities. What we found out was that we needed to broaden the overall strategy around what we wanted to do out here at Elevance Health, formerly Anthem. And as we looked at it, one of the things that became very clear is that the expectations from our members and the people we serve have changed. And as they get used to Netflix's and Amazon and Instagram experience, they do want to make sure they connect with us in a different way. So a few years back, we kind of started that process of making sure that we strategize around how do we become a more consumer-centric and a member-centric organization, focus our efforts to make sure we are understanding and delivering key capabilities, which are really personalized to the members that we serve. And with that, obviously, we started our strategy and made sure that we have a digital strategy which is more experience-led, which is more human-centered, design-based, and technology is an enabler. And as we did that, to the point that you made, the biggest challenges that we faced was, anything that you do, which is not exactly the way the business expects is a disruption. And disruption is not welcomed very easily within the organization. And you always have challenges to make sure that you are able to articulate the benefits and the end state that you're trying to drive out there. And in recent years, when we were maturing our practice, a change like pandemic, which came in, obviously kind of pushed more digital, but at the same time, the hesitancy around driving too much change to the system was always there. But the approach at Elevance Health has been to make sure that we identify the outcomes and basically are aligned towards the incentives that the outcome is going to cost. So as long as the incentives are aligned to everybody who is a stakeholder in a particular capability or what we are trying to drive, you tend to make more progress. So I think the challenges were overcome with that philosophy. And, in this case, I'll say that, for example, when we did some digital adoption and digital capabilities built out for a provider segment, the ability to take care of patients and make sure that there are better plans around the revenue cycles was key for providers. And we wanted that too. So making sure that we develop our capabilities that really take care of finding the care, making sure that we have a virtual care option and we have a digital prior auth out there was very aligned to what our providers also wanted. So making sure that the outcomes are aligned to the incentives is very, very important. And at Elevance Health, and I'm sure at a lot of places, technology, frankly, is a cornerstone of strategy that we lead with. Basically, what we wanted to do was making sure that the legacy way of reliance on technology is not how our stakeholders and business partners think about us. A very platform-centered approach, which basically allows us to create different capabilities and plug and play as we need, was very, very important. We kind of moved from a project-based development of capabilities to a more product-based development of capabilities. And as our platform was standing up, we started plugging in these capabilities one by one. And that kind of reduced the change fatigue that basically a business operations team always goes through. So as you are giving them capabilities, you are releasing more and more in an incremental cycle, but they are already used to the platform that they're using. So that basically, reduces the challenges that you face usually from a business team. And then making sure that, in the case of Sydney member, I'm glad that you mentioned out there, as we are touching 12 million registrations, we basically heard our customer's voice. We want to make sure that the voice of the customer is paramount. And we centered every capability around what we are hearing. When they're calling us, how do we listen to the calls and make sure that they know they could have done a particular task online? So how do we make sure that we build that, and we build that with a member-centric view out there? And really taking care of their journey as a whole and making sure that every part of their journey, whether it's finding care, whether it's looking at the benefits, whether it's making payments, what are the key capabilities that really resonate well with them? What are the things that members are calling us about? What are they coming to the website about or to the app about? And making sure that we are building those with a very human-centered design thinking. And then as the usage increased out there, we saw the benefits on making sure that our calls are decreasing, our customers are more satisfied. And that's how the 70% digital transactions, we have achieved. And as we move forward, frankly, we are looking at bending the curve a little bit more, and not only using our digital channel on the web and app, but also advancing how our call center technologies work and how we are pushing more towards live chat and probably AI chat, wherein we are seeing that some of the basic questions can be answered very straightforwardly. So I think, personalization, human-centered design, making sure that the incentives on the other side are aligned are the key things that basically are the challenges which can work towards to the benefit of yours if you make sure that all those are taken care of upfront.
That's very interesting, and touching on a lot of the key points we hear: voice of the customer, as you mentioned, front and center, aligning on outcomes. A lot of companies shifting to that product orientation that you mentioned as well. Ash, I'm gonna go over to you, and by way of introduction a little bit, so everyone knows, you're the global CIO of Dentons, which is the largest law firm in the world. Also, you've served as the CIO and COO at another global law firm in your past, Hogan and Lovells. At Dentons, you have over 200 offices in 80 plus countries. And in 2021 alone, you completed 7 business combinations and opened 2 new offices. So a lot going on, to say the least. I was wondering if you could start off by sharing some of your guiding principles around your operating model in that complex environment and how you structure your IT organization to accommodate those various needs.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks for having me here. And I also look forward to the conversation. It was very interesting to hear, Anil. So a little bit of context then about Denton's. It's the largest law firm that nobody's ever heard of, kind of thing, with 20,000 people in 200 offices in 80 countries. Interestingly, the firm has grown from 3,500 people 10 years ago. So there's been significant growth. The firm, when it was set up about 10 years ago, was kind of designed around scale and integration and innovation. So it's got these 3 strategic pillars. And growth has been driven through this robust M&A activity that's, as you mentioned, Michael. And we call them combinations. They're not acquisitions. They're called combinations. The firm is structured as a variant, much like the Big Four, the Deloitte, the EY. It's kind of structured in a very similar way. And these combinations, as they join the variant, retain their profitability, they retain their independence and their autonomy, and they retain their structure. And that has allowed us to be what we're very proud of, this notion of being polycentric. We don't have a headquarters. I'm based in Washington, D.C. None of my team are based in Washington, D.C. So we're literally remote everywhere. And we're literally global. So since 2013, 40 new Variant members joined the firm. Each member has retained its IT team, has retained its structure, its systems, and some of which are mandated by the firm, by Denton. So the integration process started with consolidating some of our key functions. So we've also, in terms of our strategy, in terms of growth, and there's integration. So we started to think about how we integrate as we've got this very autonomous set of businesses. And we've got a transformation program that's taking place in terms of transforming how we perform our finance function, transforming how we perform our talent management, and bringing on the right kind of talent in our organizations to meet client demands, as well as our own functional issues, as well as our risk and compliance. So we're starting that journey, right? So we've got this growth strategy and we've got an integration strategy, both of which are kind of progressing in parallel. As you can imagine, going through this kind of growth, the technology function has evolved. It hasn't developed the way that you would expect it to evolve. So to develop, if you were to build it from scratch. So it has evolved. It's made up of technology functions in each of the different Variant members, the 40 different Variant members, each with their own IT organizations, and a central team, which we call the global team. The way we've structured it in terms of roles and responsibilities is that the central team is responsible for integrating new Variant members in the combinations. As you mentioned, there are 7, just in the past year alone, and we've got a whole pipeline that are around the corner. And that integration is a light integration. It's focused on email and gone to a common domain. It's focused on baseline security requirements, the data exchange standards, between the new firm and the global firm. And having done so many of them now, it's kind of highly templatized process. We kind of follow this strict procedure. It's kind of because it's basically like a machine. So that's kind of one element of what the global team does. Another element is, as we've combined, we found that it is easier to combine if we shift people to the cloud. So the firm has become an early adopter of cloud technologies versus law firms. And we now have the largest cloud footprint of any law firm in the world, mainly driven by these combinations. So we have a team that looks entirely after our cloud strategy and a cloud-first strategy. We've adopted that strategy and provides standards and provides architecture. We have a team that provides collaboration technologies so that when these firms join, our lawyers provide a seamless way of communicating with our clients, increasingly global clients, as our footprint has grown. And of course, security is really important. So we have a unified security team as part of the central team. And finally, not only in supporting the transformation projects that I talked about before, but we also try to take advantage of our scale through commercial services by globalizing as many contracts as possible and taking advantage of our scale. So those are the things that we do today. That is our current structure today, a small team, decentralized organization around it. As security has become paramount, and particularly for our clients, because we hold very sensitive information on behalf of the clients of the firm, and as cloud has become increasingly adopted across the firm, we have realized that this mix of local and global technology responsibilities has become unwieldy and has become problematic. And so we propose transforming the technology function. We've got a strategic direction, and we're in the kind of option analysis phase right now to kind of figure out which direction we want to head in, unifying the technology function. So that kind of broad, hopefully quite a long answer to your simple question.
Ash, very, very interesting. And I always find the way professional services organizations work, especially global ones that are the largest in their industry, are structured. So very detailed and interesting response. Anil, I'm going to come back to you. And as I've learned more and more about your organization at Elevance, I'm struck by the mix of traditional IT services coupled and mixed with some of the product-centric organizations, as you mentioned earlier, and noting that there is an onshore and offshore mix across many geographies. As you made that transition towards the digital operating model focused on customer experience, what role did culture play in that transformation, and how did you maintain a strong culture across the various archetypes that we mentioned?
Sure. So I think I'm going to answer this question in two parts. One, basically, the refreshed expectations of business from a technology organization, and then how are we making sure that our talent, which is spread across different geolocations, is culturally aligned, and making sure that we are all rowing the boat in the same direction. As you know, Elevance Health, while we are a $130 billion company, but we have 100,000 associates in the States, and then we have additional 20 to 30,000 associates across the different parts of the globe. And that includes not only our operational talent and sales and marketing and others, but also technology talent, which is really spread across. In terms of making sure that first, what we did was over the last few years is that we want to make sure that my organization's goals are aligned to the business strategy and business goals. So once that happens, the work we have done over the last few years in terms of making sure that our platform-based, digital-first, technology-led ecosystem enables what I call a provider consumer to a subscriber operating model. So basically, we are building capabilities, we are consuming capabilities, and people are subscribing to different capabilities from the business units. And again, as I said, there are different business units with different varied needs out there, and you need to make sure that you are able to provide them what is really relevant to them at any particular point of time. So you do not want to overwhelm them with different capabilities. So we want to make sure this platform-based operating model allowed us to do that. And with that, there's an offering of, decision making, whether we are going to build something, we are going to buy something, we're going to borrow something, or we're going to let AI or bots take over and make sure that they do the rest of the work. So I think a very, very key strategic partnership, which allowed us to make sure that we can have these, what I call different types of product and IT technology, talent coming together to deliver to the capabilities that we have. So my organization, while I'm the global CIO, is just not technologists. It's basically technical product team members, plus the engineers working together to make sure that we are satisfying the need of the business. Now, what it allows me to do is basically we can build products at different places within, and different geolocations within, the world. So we have teams in India, we have teams in Ireland, we have teams in Israel, and obviously in States. And in States also, we have offices in different locations. Wherein we talk about a product, we want to make sure that we have a good product manager who basically understands and realizes the needs of the business, and then making sure the engineering teams, they are co-located or nearly co-located. And that's how the product and capabilities are being built. Now, as we did that, while we made sure that we were efficient, we were quick, we were agile in terms of delivering these capabilities, But there is definitely, as we saw with COVID, as we had to send a lot of people back home, and locations were not where they were, we had to take care of technical challenges of shifting these resources from different locations to remote setting, making sure that what they were doing was secure, making sure that they had all the tools and technology to do the work. And it was not just for technologists, it's basically for call center associates, for clinicians that we have, making sure that as we are shifting them to remote settings, we are making sure that the enterprise and the data within the enterprise is secure. That is one of the key things that we want to make sure that we are protecting out there. And Elevance Health is really, really very geared to make sure that we are trying to do that. And then basically, as the reduced, people were not coming to the office, we did see that people were spending more time at work, and the work-home life balance was going for a toss. So what did we do to make sure that we are really looking at that and making sure that the global, talent that we have is really aligned, but at the same time taking care of themselves? So, we basically made sure that we looked at our associates and basically saw from a human experience design perspective, what are the needs of our associates? If our associates are doing well, that's how they can produce great outcomes that our members can feel out there. So whether it was increased PTOs and holidays, whether it's fostering a team culture or cultural activities, if it allows in person or in remote, making sure that we have mental health days, making sure that we have no meeting days where nobody is allowed to have a meeting. They're going to focus on the work that they have in front of them and can execute on the task without any disruption from anybody else. Highlighting associate accomplishments and celebrating the work that they're doing in a more proactive way. Offering flexibility out there from a people balance and basically family life and work balance perspective. Those are the things that were not just done in the States. These were things that we were doing in India, Bangalore, our facility in Hyderabad, Philippines, Israel, or Ireland. So making sure that we kind of stay ahead and make sure that, again, the incentives that we are giving to our associates line up with the overall organizational goals was very, very important. And then making sure that, we are looking at, the great resignation that we are going through right now, and we want to make sure we learn from that and kind of create more hybrid workspaces, making sure that earning a paycheck is no longer limited to a particular location, and basically acknowledge that the possibilities for people to do different things has increased, and want to make sure that we create a talent without borders kind of approach, wherein the product, technology, engineering talent is together to make sure they produce some great outcomes, and frankly making sure that we are taking care of the people first, and then making sure that we expect outcomes from them. So I think those are a few of the things that we have done, and definitely seeing great results out there.
I love the voice of the customer lens applied to the employees. So a lot of people say you can't transform a customer experience without transforming the employee experience at the same time.
You know what? I think I'll speak to a couple of things over there. Basically, while we were doing a transformation which was focused on our members, actually we had two big transformations going on which were focused on our employees and our associates. Whether it's the implementation that we did of a big platform, providing them more mobile capabilities that they could log in from anywhere, look at a lot of things on the mobile app, like Sydney Health, we have a Pulse app, which basically they use. As you take care of your associates and as you give them capabilities, frankly, it does turn around the way they look at the company and how we are invested in them.
Interesting, very interesting. Ash, I'm going to come back to you. At the end of your first answer, you talked about teeing up the transformation that you're working on under this evolving IT operating model, as you said. And many executives on the call right now are either contemplating their transformation or in the throes of it right now. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about how you've gone about selling this transformation to the evolved operating model, and what advice would you give to those other global technology executives contemplating that shift themselves?
Well, we're looking to become more efficient, in how we provide services to the firm by unifying the technology function. And of course, that means a shift in accountability from local IT organizations to a firm-wide unified IT team delivering local services. Explaining this is highly complicated, and it means a change of structure, it means how the organization is funded and how it's governed, how prioritization protocols are implemented, and how that melds together firm-wide transformational priorities versus the regional and local priorities. We're all providing legal services, so this, we don't have different products and services across the firm, so that makes it easier to sell the idea. We can't really explain to lawyers the technical complexity of this environment, because we are a law firm, and the leadership of the firm are lawyers, and it is difficult to explain the complexity that has resulted from the M&A approach that the firm has taken. Even though that's been proven to be incredibly successful from a commercial and financial perspective for all the members of the firm. So the approach I took was going to probably describe the value proposition through their lens, through the lens of clients, our competitors, to the management of risk, and on the basis of efficiency. What I did was, with respect to clients, for instance, I explained that as we have grown, we've developed a global footprint, and we are therefore able to service the needs of our global clients better than most of our competitors. We have talent that our clients need wherever they are present, if they're global. We analyze cross-region revenues from our global clients, and analyze their compliance demands, and we as I said, we hold very sensitive information on behalf of our clients, and they audit us quite often. We have third-party auditors who audit our compliance to all kinds of rules across the world. So we analyze our cross-region revenues and our global clients. We analyze compliance with key demands, and we showed how we better complied with the global standards and the specific client demands, and how making these changes will make it easier for our lawyers and our partners to be able to do business with our clients. That we will be able to provide consistent service from wherever we did the work. Basically taking a kind of perspective of a client-in perspective. So a joined-up technology organization would enable us to make all this happen. So that was kind of one important. From a competitive point of view, we also did a kind of as best as we could, analysis of our competition to see where our competition is focusing their attention, and kind of identify where gaps might be in terms of what our capabilities are versus our competition, and how this strategy would kind of help us help the firm and our lawyers, particularly our partners, leapfrog our peers to be able to provide better seamless services to our clients, to provide advanced technologies and automation and artificial intelligence that we can apply to the work that the lawyers do again with their clients, rather than focused on the plumbing, which has become really complicated right now. And then thirdly, cost. Of course, much of the purpose of doing this is to become a lot more efficient. So we did quite a detailed business case, cost projections, comparing various strategies with in terms of moving towards a unified organization, which of course there are various paths to get to it, versus staying as is. So doing those two, we could see, we could demonstrate how shifting would result in greater efficiencies and would result in the better improvement of services to our lawyers, and therefore to our clients, and therefore gaining greater value from continuing investment within technology. So those are kind of things that we used. As I said, we are in the middle of option analysis in terms of how to deliver it. So we'll see how these how these kind of evolve as we continue on our journey.
Yeah, I think orienting the transformation around business outcomes that everyone can agree with, and using external and competitive analysis, never a bad idea in selling the transformation. Anil and Ash, I really want to thank you for joining us today. It has been a great conversation.